Hello, and welcome to another Donaram podcast. We're going to do something a bit different this time. This one's going to more resemble a PSA than it is our normal jovial podcast.
Yeah.
If that's not your thing, that's cool. We have a whole library of other podcasts that you can go back and enjoy. Look forward to next week, where another podcast will be arriving Friday at noon. But there's kind of an elephant in the room right now. It's something that Don and I and Adam and Luke even we all grew up with. Mm-hmm. It's a question that was very prevalent in the public eye in the 1990s, and I think this is the second time it's reared up in Trump's presidency. I think this is the second time. This might.
Well, it happens, once every 2 weeks at least,
right?
For obvious reasons.
So it might even become a staple of his presidency. This question, and the mission statement of Donaram, of course, is we want to talk about how video games have affected our lives. So we can't not talk about this question. And the question is: do video games influence violence in the real world? And Don, you and I were talking the other night, and you kind of gave me a little bit of a history lesson on the phrase, which of course I grew up with it. I know the news and everything.
It's literally as old as we are. There was the oldest one I've seen was an actual pretty fair interview with John Stossel. Well, not interview with him. He was running around interviewing parents and kids about this crazy thing called Nintendo.
Nuts for Nintendo. 2020, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And basically it was just like, wow. Video games are kind of our thing. How did the Japanese get ahead of us? And that's actually kind of, interesting on the history. And then, of course, they have, the boomer moment where like, okay, now there are some people out there who are really concerned what these are going to do to our kids. So they interviews
like 5-year-olds.
They get a bunch of really cute kids. They're probably they probably have like 8 kids by now themselves.
Mostly little girls. Yeah, if I remember. Yeah,
and they're like okay, so why do you like? I just like. I like stomping on people and killing them.
Right, like
it's like, and there's like they didn't put like the dramatic Fox News graphics. They had a little more taste back in 1988, but it's obvious just kids talking. I like throwing boomerangs and bombs at people.
Right, and it's just kids that they're like. It's not. They think it's rad.
There's cool things happening, just like every other piece of media throughout history.
Film, television.
There's a notebook in ancient Novgorod, which is actually really great because there's like an 8-year-old kid way back in the 12th century was being taught mathematics, and like every kid, he was doodling instead. So we have this ancient collection of this kid being bored while a monk is trying to teach him how to read. And what is he doing? He is scribbling a guy on horseback shooting an arrow at a troll.
Oh wow, that's
a kid is a
right.
kid.
A kid is a kid. They, I remember in elementary school when we had free draw in art class, I would draw sword fights and stuff like that. Poorly, but I would draw them.
At the end of the day, video games are. This isn't a video games or art conversation. Video games are media. It's a way to express ourselves.
Absolutely.
If they didn't connect in some way, the way all art does, they wouldn't be as successful as they are.
Absolutely. Video games. They are. It's no different than watching a movie, and I think there's actually been psychiatric studies proving that when when Kratos has got the guy down and he's beating his head in, the neural synapses firing in your brain are no different than the ones if you're watching a film of that happen.
Okay, yeah, that sounds about right.
I'm pretty sure I've seen that. So basically, you're not basically a serial killer playing Grand Theft Auto is not going to get what he wants out of playing Grand Theft Auto. Mm-hmm. So
you can get that anywhere.
Right. It's so basically, which actually would serve to make video games sort of a public service. Actually, another argument is with the Call of Duty series, do video games cause violence, or does violence cause video games?
Or does the military-industrial complex cause violence? And video games about violence.
Video games about, but
who's
that's
the real monster here? Who's the unpatriotic one?
So that's sort of
questioning our troops, Mr. President. Really?
So I don't know how bad Trump is bulldogging this time.
I think Well, the
I
thing,
think
okay.
someone from a video game company, I think Ubisoft or something, he actually had the last time this question came up, someone went to the White House to talk to him. Like, he set up a meeting.
Yeah.
Like he always does.
Yeah.
Where he's like...
The thing is that like there are two things that always crop up like mushrooms when violent video games becomes in vogue on this regular basis that we live in. The other one is mental illness,
Absolutely.
which is also ridiculous because just like mental illness is very common in some form or another, and it's just like video games. Everyone plays video games basically, or at least has some affiliation with them. It's
someone in your
hard
house
not to.
does. Yeah.
It's a cultural thing you have to engage with to function. And, understanding mental illness, living with it, in a lot of people's cases, living with it. Like, we talk about, we need to stop stigmatizing mental illness, which is why all these mentally ill people just keep shooting up. Yeah. Okay. Which is defines stigmatization for me.
Like we don't need to stigmatize these people. The same people that are shooting everyone. Yeah. It's so basically, like you said, they are stigmatizing in their call for non-stigmatization.
Yeah. And so, full disclosure, when I was I guess I still do. I have obsessive compulsive disorder. I was really bad when I was younger. Like it's not like, oh, well, this has to be like this. It's kind of like that, but not really. It's invasive thoughts that you don't have any control over. They're not real. They can't hurt you, but you can't get rid of them. And one coping mechanism is to just repeat like a counter incantation to those thoughts. Like for me, I would just repeat a prayer to try to drive the thoughts away and get some handle on my thought process. But later, when I was in church, I found out when I heard the prayers that I use as a counter incantation, I had begun to associate them with those negative thoughts and anxieties so much that just hearing my counter incantation would put me back in that negative headspace. And I realized that you can't engage with your problem that way. You can't just say a word and hope that it's going to be there.
Right.
You're not solving the problem. And basically what violence in video games is, it's not an actual debate topic. It's not a topic for discussion. It's a topic to make something go away that's not going to go away.
Absolutely. It's a scapegoat mechanism.
And that is why it provokes such a visceral reaction from everyone on YouTube. Because we've heard it literally our entire lives. The issue has never been engaged with in good faith. When someone says violence in video games, they're not offering solutions. They're not talking about video games as a medium, about what violence is appropriate to tell a story. It's just, I don't want to talk about this issue, but I do want to look like I care.
Absolutely.
It is a bad faith statement.
It really is. I mean, that's the bottom line.
It's why you can't really engage with this seriously, because the people who put it out there aren't taking the issue seriously.
Right. They don't want you to come back with facts, because that's not what it was about. It was about, hey, shut up.
And that's
what it was about.
And that is why some phrases elicit visceral reactions, like a dog whistle racism. Like people who don't know anything about the issue will like, well, why are you upset by that word? He didn't literally say, the word. He said this word, which is completely different.
Right.
But, if you think about it for like half a second,
seconds, right.
If you live with it, and there are very few things as white men we have to live with.
Right,
this
we don't have to put up
to be
with
one of them.
Right.
Like since 1988, every time something bad happens, everyone starts to look at everyone suspiciously. Columbine happens. Hey, this guy listens to Marilyn Manson. You know what that means?
Yeah, and I think actually,
Parents.
right, and I think that whole thing actually messed Marilyn Manson, Brian Warner up pretty bad. I'm not a big Manson fan, so I don't know. But I heard him talking in an interview, because you didn't hear a lot about him after that. Like after 19, and he was basically like, everyone said I caused this horrible thing, and it's like, fuck that.
I know.
And that had to have,
Like, I was never that big into music at all. He was one of the people I knew, but only because the news wouldn't shut up about him.
Every single record Marilyn Manson sold was because of knee-jerk, scared-ass parents. Every record. Because, honestly, I don't think his music's that great.
Like, I remember seeing one of those, Christian bonfires specifically about his music.
That happened the last time he came to Evansville.
Yeah.
He's coming again, but it's kind of weird because he's coming again, and like the news keeps trying to make
Judge
that a
Living
story.
in the Dead, yeah. I like Marilyn Manson just because he seems like a nice guy.
That's what I was saying. I read his biography. I like him as a guy. I just don't think his music's all that great.
Yeah, it's fine. My
Which is
music's
fine.
not that good either.
Right. By the way, Marilyn Manson, your music is 1,000 times better than mine. I'll say that. But anyway, yeah, it's sort of and the Doom issue. Doom. We don't want to play this game Doom. I can actually go right now and spend $10 on my Nintendo Switch. The fun little toy console, and Doom is on there for $10. The original Doom, and
the most family-oriented console you could possibly imagine.
Absolutely produced for that purpose. And I remember Doom being one of Dad's, because when we first got a computer, my dad would just come home with floppy disks from like people that he knew at work, and he's like, "These are games. Try these," because he just loved that I was so enthusiastic about a computer. Because he just, growing up in the age he did, he just associated if he's good with computers, he's good.
Yeah,
he'll be good, even if it's playing these games, getting them to work. There's good.
That association, yeah.
So, and it's true in some part, playing with something is going to help you get interested. But anyway, Doom was one of them. And I remember figuring out so much about how a computer worked, getting Doom to work. And like I said, this isn't saying like Doom is, like no, wait, Doom's not only is it not bad, it's what society needs. That's not what I'm saying here. I'm saying it was literally just like any other game. It was just like any other movie, any other book.
But if your only engagement with that game is seeing it on the news,
you're going to think it's the great evil.
And you're old and you have brain worms. And
you actually still enjoy listening to Imagine by John Lennon.
Which, you paid your dues. You fought the good fight. Now everyone just needs to love you forever.
The boomers, man. But back to what you said, it is just a bad faith statement. I don't want to talk about it. It's what about this over? It's like at work when you get caught not working, and you're like, well, that guy isn't working either. Yeah. That's exactly what it is.
Argument.
That's not an argument. It doesn't matter if that guy's not working. You're on the clock too, buddy. Like, I use that all the time at work.
Yeah. By the way. Like, well, maybe you should go home and make your wife happy. How about that? like nonsense statements that you generally only see on Fox News comments when you actually try to engage. Like, that's not actually.
Are they running with this right now? Fox News. This is. I can see Tucker Carlson really digging into.
They generally just do this. Violence, video games, violence, video games, violence, video games, la 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 la, and then they're okay. But they haven't engaged with the problems, so their negative headspace is just going to keep consuming them.
Right.
Get help.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. That's really what it boils down to. And that goes back to their not stigmatizing mental illness. Is maybe you need to address something about yourself.
Look, even boomers, a lot, especially boomer males, really like Tony Soprano on The Sopranos, even though authorial intent was this man is a monster and you should hate him. Even he recognized that he has some issues and he's trying to deal with them responsibly so he could be a better villain.
The therapist was actually one of my favorite characters.
She was
in Sopranos.
The moment when she has her assault and she is the police can't. She knows who did it, but the police they fudged up the case, so they can't arrest him. He's out there on the streets. She just happens to know someone who can remove him from the streets permanently. And there's that moment where she thinks, okay, I have power and agency again. I have this. I have my white knight, and she doesn't tell him.
Right.
That is such an awesome moment for her character.
That is a huge thing.
She does have that liberal tourism. Like, I'm just, I can meet with evil people, and I can interview them for the New York Times, and I'm still me. I'm still a good person. But that is the moment where she straight up makes that choice and chooses to be a good person.
Right, and that's just incredible storytelling in The Sopranos. Watch The Sopranos.
It's a great show.
It's a fantastic show. But
yeah, the I guess the side story of if you have a narcissistic parent, it is not your fault. Just, get out of the garbage business and, literally do anything else.
I always thought it was funny that he said it was in the garbage business and that's why they had all that money. I always thought that was funny as a kid, and then I grew up and realized, wait a minute, there's actually a lot of money in that industry. Like, that was actually a good cover.
Yeah.
That was very fair. So the question, does video games cause violence in the real world? The answer to this question
may surprise you.
No, but the answer is an emphatic, you're looking at the wrong fucking thing, buddy.
Yeah.
That's the answer to that question.
Can bees think?
Can bees?
No, they can't.
Frankly, I find the idea of a bug that can think offensive. Hit us with that reference in the comments. Prove how good of a person you are.
It's okay. There is, like, the thing is, it's. I really love the movie 12 Angry Men, where it's such a liberal movie. It is the quintessential liberal movie where one guy is emphatically right, but his time has not caught up with him yet, and he's trying to convince everyone, like, look, this guy is innocent. It's obvious he's innocent. Well, look at him. Yeah, I looked at him. He looks guilty. He's innocent, though.
Right.
And, like, engaging with bad faith statements like video games and violence is such liberal bait, though, because they love to talk. It's something they do, and they don't recognize bad faith actors like, most people on YouTube, us excluded, obviously.
Us excluded. We're
very
one
good
of the good
faith.
ones.
When we talk,
we're very good faith.
Like, we mean everything we say. But, like, you engage with it because there is interesting questions to be asked as to what violence in video games is appropriate, whether it is, going to a dark place. It's like when you talk about humor or comedy, the targets matter.
Absolutely.
If you're punching up, it's a lot easier to sell. But if the video game is, hey, here's a baseball bat, go beat up a bunch of homeless people like A Clockwork Orange.
Right.
Now, I'm not going to say that should be banned. I'm not saying that's actually going to influence people to do that. But honestly,
the question becomes why?
What video game are you trying to make? What are you trying to say here?
For instance, a huge one, Grand Theft Auto 5, a couple years ago, the Trevor torture scene.
I never actually.
That was huge. So everyone was so upset that there was this torture scene in it. And what it is the characters, Trevor and, was it Michael? Yeah, Trevor and Michael, they're being forced to torture this guy. The whole game is Mike gets on a lot of debt. Mm-hmm. He's got to get out of the debt. Trevor finds out Mike's still alive. Trevor has a vendetta, blah, 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 blah. They're being the whole game is a series of shit they don't want to do, but they have to do to get out of this hole they're in. At one point, torture comes up. Of course, knee-jerk reaction from Mike. Fuck that. I'm not torturing nobody. Fuck that. They have to. So they're going. Mike's settling himself into him having to do this thing that even he recognizes as a terrible thing. And Trevor's like, no, you go. I hate you, but you don't need to be here. Go. And Trevor takes care of it. And so it's a horrible, horrible scene. I didn't like playing it. Mm-hmm. But there's a narrative reason for it. Because as you're driving away, Trevor's driving the guy he tortured somewhere to drop him off. Mm-hmm. He's like, okay, we're done with you. I need to dump you somewhere. And the whole way, Trevor's like, I didn't get a bit of good information out of you. Turns out, torture's fucking stupid. Yeah. And he goes on. And he actually, because the whole thing with Trevor is he's insane, but I hate this in like any sort of media. He's the insane guy that speaks the truth. Everyone is, why can't we just have a reasonable person say these things? Why does it have to be this cartoony insane? Anyway, he's driving and he's basically going over how futile it was, and how it didn't make any sense, and so it was sort of like, hey, we're Grand Theft Auto, we're gonna do this, thing, and you're gonna be like, whoa, and then afterwards, it's like, hey, what you just saw was a bunch of bullshit, and like you said, why is it there? Mm-hmm. Give us the reason why it's there. So, and it sort of goes back to that.
There was another game that I didn't play, but past a certain point, I hit college, and I went on something awful when they were starting the Let's Play thing. And eventually Special Ops The Line came out, and people were talking about it because it was kind of a subversive shooter. And there's that scene that's pretty iconic for the game where you see the aftermath of a white phosphorus attack.
Oh, yeah.
Now, that is, like, that whole game is about violence breaking the characters slowly as they go through their Heart of Darkness story.
And by the way, it was marketed, produced, and all the media relating to it was just like, hey, it's Call of Duty.
Yeah.
So it was a really...
It's a very subversive story.
A brilliant game. But go on, I'm sorry.
Yeah, but basically that's just the point. The violence has a purpose in the story. It's not meant to be fun. And basically there's parts of the game where, like, at the bottom it just says you can stop playing this anytime. You know that, right?
Right.
And it's basically like that. It's basically like the Undertale conundrum where they throw you up against Sans on the genocide run. Like, dude, why are you doing this? You could be doing literally anything else. You got an ending.
Right.
You don't need to see everything a game can do.
Right.
Like, is the violence really that much fun? That fun for you? It's
right.
An interesting question, and it makes violence meaningful.
Right. Fictional narrative violence.
Fictional.
So violence, as it turns out, is used in video games for the same exact narrative reasons it is used in film or in books since the time that mankind first drew a picture on a wall in a cave.
Of a good guy slapping a bad guy, or a bad guy hurting a defenseless person and making you hate him.
Right. Yeah, I mean, because our villain, the killing the youngling scene in Revenge of the Sith.
Oh yeah,
we needed we've been rooting for Anakin this whole time. We needed to understand this is Darth Vader.
If he does anything more, I don't know if I'm gonna do it.
I'm on the fence. I'm on the fence right now, Andy.
Like,
you can bring it back, buddy, or you can drop it, or you can nope. And of course the kid comes up and says, Master Skywalker. Like they just
they really sell it.
They really sell it. So it's but there's a reason it was in the movie, is because George Lucas had you root for Anakin this whole time. I mean, remember when he blew up the Trade Federation station in episode 1? We all had a good laugh. Because the Sand People was almost a that was
they're animals.
I
killed them like animals.
So there was there was like sort of like, okay, but wait, maybe he regrets that because that was out of anger. But the younglings, that's absolutely deliberate. So.
Like violence in cinema. If you like cinema, you should question whether you're going to heaven. There is one of my favorite movies of all time. Come and see. I can't remember the director's name because it's Russian. It's a Soviet film made during Gorbachev era, and it is based off the Soviet Union's wartime experiences during World War II. It is not a fun movie. It is emphatically a war film that is an anti-war film. And they say that it is straight up impossible to make an anti-war war film because some clueless, absolute angel of a 40 to 50-year-old man who never served in the military will nod his head sagely at every word spoken by someone in a uniform with a gun. Like, yeah, that'd be me. That'd be me. If it weren't for this leg, that'd have been me.
I had a football scholarship. I couldn't turn it down.
Come and See is about two children in Belarus, and the war happens. And it's played specifically for historical accuracy, which is about the worst thing you can do for a World War II film. You kind of have to fictionalize it to make it passable for a modern audience.
Absolutely.
But Come and See does not do that. It does absolutely. The execution scenes are all very matter of fact. There is a very extended scene of a Belarusian village being liquidated, and the shot lingers. There's no jump cuts. That's not like a Soviet style. That's just as strange for a Soviet film as it is for ours. An extended cut like that, where the camera's just kind of rolling through smoke. You see soldiers joshing with each other smoking cigarettes, being buds while terrible things are happening in the background. You hear crying, and then there's the main character who is being lined up for execution, but the gun keeps malfunctioning. and like you see the main character's acting is great. He doesn't have that many lines of spoken dialogue because his eyes are just popping out the back of his head. His face is blanched. He's not. It's not a. This is a crushing movie, and he eventually survives, joins the partisans, but there's no real happy ending for him.
What's the runtime on the movie?
It's like 2 hours, I think. It's a long movie.
Oof.
When it aired in Germany, there are a lot of stories of people having to be hospitalized. One German war veteran was basically went into a depressive state and kept moaning, "It's all true. It's all true."
Wow.
That is violence used to communicate something.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It's hard to do, but it's important to try because violence is a part of our lives and we need to communicate that.
Right, and it's sort of the couple that doesn't talk about divorce.
Yeah.
Guess what's going to happen in 10 years? Like, it's that sort of thing. It's the if you don't the elephant in the cliche of the elephant in the room. If you don't talk about it, it'll wait. What does that mean? If you don't talk about it, it'll stomp you. Is that what it's going for?
I've only ever just heard that we need to address the elephant in the room because it would be rude not to. Like he's a cartoon elephant.
Oh,
he's a fun little cartoon elephant. Like,
okay.
Hey, notice me, senpai. Okay, flying mammoth. You were a good boss. Thank you.
Was I a good boss? No, I'm told you were one of the best.
Wasn't. No. He made me waste time on that run.
Isn't he the one where you just sort of like jank the corner?
Yeah, you can if your thumbs work. My thumbs don't work. I injured them once, so yeah, they don't work. Anyway, this is a hard topic to discuss because it's not a good. There's a lot of cool things you could talk about if that phrase didn't exist in the way it exists.
Right. This isn't an academic question.
Yeah.
This is not a philosophical question.
It's not being posed in a symposium. It's being shouted to drown out literally anything else.
But what about her emails?
Pretty much. Yeah.
Pretty much.
It's a unhealthy coping mechanism for a legitimate, this world kind of sucks quite a bit. Mm-hmm. And it's going to cause you anxiety. Like, you don't have to have obsessive compulsive disorder to feel anxiety.
Absolutely.
And you just need to learn effective coping mechanisms. And sometimes that just means examining something in good faith in a safe space. Like if you don't want to discuss certain topics that are controversial, that's fine. That's normal. Mm-hmm. It's human. Mm-hmm. But find someone you trust, someone you feel you can talk to, and just talk because that helps. Absolutely.
And that's I don't think there's anything more to say about do video games cause violence, because we just emphatically answered it probably about midway through. That's not the problem.
There's no reason to belabor the point, and I don't really think I know a lot of people are making videos of this right now. People with actual viewers,
people with a lot of clout.
Yeah, yes. And they're like trying. They're answering the question. They do a lot of good research. It's just the question is not.
It's falling on deaf ears because they didn't want to hear it in the first place.
It's the 12 Angry Men without the happy conclusion.
So if you were tuning in to get that sort of video,
I apologize. It's just not who I don't have that kind of style normally. Not on topics like this. So.
We haven't. This is an honest forum. It always has been. This is just one of the more serious topics we've covered.
Yeah.
So that's going to be it for us on this.
Yeah. Feel free to criticize violence in video games. Just make sure you're criticizing it for it being a bad video game, making bad decisions.
Absolutely. The same reasons you would have filmed a book, a television show.
Did Mario really need the to reenact the Scarface Chainsaw Massacre? I'm just going to say it's interrupting the pacing. It's just, I understand why they did it. I understand. I'm an auteur. Really.
I am a reasonable centrist.
But did it have to be done here in this medium we call video games? Have a good
have a good day and
night.
And examine the bad faith arguments that you've heard in your life.
Recognize them, move past them.
Move past them. Absolutely.